Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of Soul Over Matter podcast. Today, I have on a dear friend, Sydney Crutch. She is a writer, a poet, an artist, a solo traveler, and author of the upcoming book, Golden Threads. Sydney, welcome to Soul Over Matter. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I'm excited to have you on and share your story and just share parts of you. And I always begin with our story. So, how did you get to Sydney of today? If you want to share bits and parts of who you are.
Oof, big question. All right, let's dive right in.
Yeah, dive right in, girl.
Okay, let's see what comes to mind to share first. I My name is Sydney. I'm from North Carolina, from Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm here currently, and yeah, I went to college in Pennsylvania, moved to Europe after graduation, lived in Germany and Spain for 4 years total, and then became really sick with an ambiguous illness that no one could really diagnose. And it was affecting everything. I couldn't work well and just needed extra support. So I decided to move back to North Carolina, and the next 2, 3 years after that were really just spent kind of restructuring my entire life. And I believe that the illness was very much connected to a major spiritual awakening that I had the previous year in 2017, um, which the book Golden Threads deals with kind of this post period where I'm integrating this experience in the throes of the illness and then moving out of them. And it definitely chronicles a lot of that time and the emotions around it all, and letting go of a life that was no longer mine, and connecting in, like finding that new puzzle piece of who I am and where I'm meant to be going, and finding my voice as an artist through that. So, um, yeah, that's kind of an overview, and how the book is connected. But yeah, I've traveled widely in Europe when I was living there, and as much as I can when I get the chance. And how Michelle and I met was this past year, or man, yeah,
2022, girl.
2022. Well, we met 2022, but I was still traveling most of last year. So
Hmm.
for about a year, I was going across, around the country, out of my car, camping and just, uh, yeah, traveling and exploring this country. And we met through that process. But yeah, travel is a huge part of my life and journey, and definitely makes it into the book. And yeah, the connection to nature and how how integral that has been in my own process with the healing, and also just continuing to stay healthy in that connection through my travels and all of that. So there's a little piece of my life. So
I know, right? We can't ever encompass our entire life's journey. And it's always changing too, right? I listened to episodes of this podcast from 2021 when I started, and I'm like, who is that talking? Like, that's not me. And like, we're always changing, we're always evolving. So I love that your travels and your personal experiences, this illness have inspired this book of yours, Golden Threads. And where did the name Golden Threads come from?
so it was actually a poem that I wrote that's in the book. that it's the poem is called Golden Threads, and I speak about what I mean in the poem. But it wasn't the name until I wrote this poem, and then over time, when the book started coming together, it was like, this is it. Like that's what I have to call it. But the meaning behind it for me is really the the pieces, the threads that lead us out of the dark, and they can be people, relationships, environments, places, ideas, constructs in our mind, like whatever it is, inspiration, art, whatever it is that can kind of reach you, that you can see when you're in those deep dark places. um, and you can hold on to it even if you can't hold on to anything else,
Mm,
and kind of just pull your way through, and in time a new dawn comes, a new perspective, a new place, a new experience that um yeah, brings us back into the light in whatever way that we want to phrase that. I think we go through many of these dark spaces in our life, and that can be, internally, externally, but I view it as a natural part of life. It's the natural ebb and flow, and um yeah, so the golden threads, to me, it means it's these lines, lifelines that connect us back to who we are ultimately, and to remembering that.
beautiful. So you feel like this book, such a beautiful imagery as well. Like when I heard the name of your book, the imagery is so powerful, and you so this book kind of chronicles that dark night of the soul for you, that coming out of this, that confusion, that illness, right? So what symptoms did you have that were unexplainable to anyone around you?
So the symptoms themselves weren't the unexplainable part. I know what you mean. Like no one could put them together to create one kind of diagnosis, but it was dizziness and energy loss, and kind of would come on all at once. It would be like these episodes of
Mm,
intense dizziness and energy loss where all of my energy would just kind of deplete at once. And it would take, in the beginning it was like a few hours, and then I would start to feel back to normal, and then with each one it would take longer, and it would be days and sometimes weeks. And when I realized that pattern, that it wasn't getting better, it was getting worse, it became okay, like I need to shift gears and find a way out. But those were the main ones. Like that's how it started. But there was also, I mean, I had major heart palpitations, headaches. I had like an ongoing kind of cold. I know that seems a bit benign, but it kind of started that way as sort of like flu symptoms. And I was not one to ever have congestion for a long period. So that was like another indicator of like, okay, something's off. So, but yeah, my CRP, the C-reactive protein levels, were through the roof, and that was one of the indicators. The doctors were like, "We believe you. Something's really off, but we don't know what it is." Oh, it was a lot of symptoms like Lyme disease. And when
mm,
I got home, I was tested for that. I started working with a functional medicine doctor, and it came back negative. It can it can hide itself. Lyme's can, with if it's in a dormant period, when you take the test, it won't show as positive. So I mean, it's possible, but yeah, those were the symptoms to start. and in time, through just uh, a lot of my own research into diet and options of how to, like, lower the inflammation levels in my body, and getting very into yoga and meditation, and just kind of repatterning, uh, coming back to a homeostasis. Throughout this entire process, I learned that my nervous system was it had kind of been reset when all this happened with this spiritual awakening, which I can share about as well, and the illness. I was just kind of raw and out there, and there was no covering anymore, no um, boundaries or shields up. And so I kind of had to relearn how to do that in a sustainable way. Um, but in something that was stronger than, like, protecting my ego and actually listening to what I needed, what my body was needing. And this is a huge kind of thread through the book, is learning to listen to your body, and learning to remember that um, our unique needs are not always the needs of those around us, not always the needs of the society or the way we grow up. And I think up until that point, I was very much operating under that assumption. So this was a big break. It was kind of like the before and after period of my life that I pinned things on, where I really started to understand this and start structuring my life in a way that was sustainable for me, and to even learn and know what that was.
Mm, yeah, that journey to back to self, right? That so many of us go through, and through different ways, like you share in your book in the forward. It could be a breakup, right? It could be an illness, it could be spiritual awakening, it could be like so many different things, but so many of us have a catalyst. We all have something. It could be minor, it could be huge, but there's always that point of knowing, like, okay, I was a different person yesterday and I'm a different person after this point.
Exactly. Yeah. It was my kind of catalyst and breaking point, one of them in that period. And yeah, I'm immensely grateful to it. And I am not the same person that I was before. Um, and I've learned so much. And yeah, the book is it shares about those portions, those emotions, and the tools and the ways that I use to move through it, to surrender into it, and then to feel that hope, and, like, learn how to come back home into my body. But it's, yes, it's the back home, back into who I was before all of the conditioning, but also kind of letting go of these parts of me that were not serving me anymore, and opening to what was. And it's a yeah, like you said, I feel like most, if you're willing, if you're willing to do this, most people will have some kind of experience of it. And it's scary as all hell, but as transformational and rewarding as anything can be.
Mm. Have you always been a writer? Like ever since you were young, were you always writing poetry or journaling? Like when did you really step into that artist archetype?
Yeah, so I looking back, I've always been a writer. When I was little, I have journals from, I don't know, middle school or even before that. Yeah. And a lot of it was lyrics. I was writing lyrics then, before the poetry ever came in. I mean, it is poetry. Uh, but I didn't fully embrace it. I'd say, like, recognize that this is what I feel really called to do in this life. It's until 2018, where I remember vividly. I don't know that I've ever shared this with many people, but it's a little. It's not embarrassing, but it's like those things that inspire you. I I got really into One Direction and and Harry Styles in 2018. Like, I didn't know them, who they were before, and I heard one of his songs and was like, "Oh, this is really good." So I looked it up, and then that led me down the whole One Direction rabbit hole. I don't know if you ever have gotten yourself into that.
No.
No? Okay.
I might have to
Any
after this
you
episode.
I mean, it's entertaining. But I was very deep in the throes of, like, this was soon, like, less than 6 months after I'd moved back from Spain, still didn't know what was going on illness-wise, and it was just, yeah, I was in a pretty dark place, and somehow this watching their journey was so inspirational, and to see these it was 5 guys that, got put together through the X Factor in England, and, 5 guys with, they're pretty good musically, but nothing crazy, and just watching them, their excitement. It was the
Mm.
excitement, I think, that I could really just grab onto, and um music has always been insanely inspirational to me, and I think that is a big chapter of my life as well, I think, in creating music. But anyway, this something about them and like watching that just inspired me to a point that I hadn't been in a while. And it made me realize how much art and words and writing are important to me, and not just important to me, but yeah, what I'm meant to share. And so, yeah, there's many inspirations over the years, but I can point to that. It was like Thanksgiving 2018, and I just remember just feeling inspired for the first time in a long time, and um and knowing what I was supposed to do,
Mm.
even when everything else seemed so up in the air and scary. Like, this like purpose kind of dropped in, and I've always known it to a degree, but for some reason at that point it just I accepted it fully, and kind of let go of all of the voices that said, art isn't a sustainable way, or can't make money at it. So, all of those things that I think I internalized over the years. Um, Around that time was when I said, "Fuck it," and we're going for it, and whatever comes of it, but that's not what it is for. It's because it's life. It's to create is just it's what we're made for.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and that deconditioning, right? Like you said before, like the deconditioning, the unbecoming of everything, especially as women, men too, of course, but with women, there's so many boxes that we are put in by society, by ourselves, right? By others, by teachers, and we're meant to create, like we're meant to birth babies, but also projects, ideas, and there is that deconditioning of the artist archetype, right? Because it's not what society deems as quote unquote successful, right? But it's like that's your purpose. And for you to feel that and act on it after that time period. So is that like when you began the poems from the book, or there are some from before that time period as well?
Around about there. But before get into that, I want to say that I feel this is very deeply to be my purpose, but even people that don't necessarily feel that way about a specific art form being their purpose, I feel so strongly about art just being something that, I believe we're all artists and we all are creators, and it doesn't mean being a writer or a musician or a painter. It can mean cooking, it can mean like the way we move and the way we speak is art. The way we connect with our family and of course all the other ways too, but yeah, it's this deconditioning, and I think it's so important to like talk about that as much as we can because art is literally it's therapy and it's
Mhm.
expression is therapy, and when we're conditioned to think that it's not and think that it's not for us when it's been commodified and the only value that it has as deemed by society is what can make money or what is sounds good or looks good, and it's so much more than that. It's we have to create shitty art, like that's the point. The point isn't for it to be perfect. The point is to just create and to tell our story in whatever way. And yeah, that's what I hope Golden Threads can be for people, honestly, more than anything else, is just this permission slip to create and to see someone else who's just like them doing this and realize like, oh, my story is just as important as hers. And yeah, because so many people have done that for me and so many artists, and I'm sure you just creating this podcast, people see it or listen to it and they're like, "Oh my god, like I want to do that." Like sometimes we need that example. Anyway, I
And
had
to
to
do
say
it
that.
messy, right? Like,
Yeah.
and we've chatted about this before, that imperfectionism and just like fucking put it out there, like I agree with you. Like art is we're seeing, we're conditioned to like art class, right? It's painting or music, and it's like art is any expression of your soul. Like anything that comes
Mm.
out of your body that you like express is art. And yeah, like you said, the shitty art, like it's still beautiful. It's the process, it's the putting yourself out there and saying, like you said, fuck it. Like I'm creating this. This is my expression. This is how I feel in this moment. And it's not meant to be perfect, right? Like what is perfect anyway?
It's not, it doesn't exist. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the longer you go down a certain route, of course, you're going to learn and you're going to evolve and it's going to become more solidified and you're going to recognize like what your voice is maybe. And, maybe that's what people look at and say, like, oh, they're good at it. If anyone's not watching video, I have quotes up. But yeah, like, but I don't think that is the point. The point is to continually express and not focus on being good at anything and then let life take you where it's going to take you for whatever reason.
Mm, yeah.
Anyway, you asked me a question before I went off on that tangent. I can go back if you want.
I don't remember the question.
It was is that when I started writing the
Oh,
poems.
yes. Is that like when you started the book?
So I think that's when I started writing poems with like an intention to not even to publish. I don't think it was until 2020 that I really uh, put things into a book. Um, but 2018 is when I started uh, like purposefully carving time for the craft and not only just writing when inspiration came maybe, but like viewing this as a something I like want to actively devote time to. Um, but yeah, the poems in the book go back to definitely 2018, and I'm not sure if there's any from 2017, but from that time period is around the beginnings of them, and they cover topics in 2017 definitely, which was when I had the major awakening, when I walked the Camino de Santiago in Spain, and then when the illness started. So, yeah.
How was that walking? How long did that take you? And you said you did it alone, right?
Yeah. You meet people along the way, but I set out alone. It took me about 30 days um from where I started to the coast, but I also stopped a fair amount. I would take, had some blister days and some
Mm.
recovery days and things like that. But yeah, I started in Logroño where I lived in Spain, which is about a quarter of the path already in. So I did about like 3/4 of that particular camino. Camino Francés is that one, which is the main one. And then there's also Camino Norte, Camino Portugal, I think, but it goes up from Portugal. But these are all routes that people would take to reach the relics of St. James, supposedly, which are in Santiago in northwest Spain. It's this ancient pilgrimage route that was is a Christian pilgrimage route, but over time it's definitely become known as just a more spiritual pilgrimage, or people, you can hike it for any reason. I didn't set out with with any notion. It was more I had the summer off from school. Uh I was teaching English, and yeah, just decided to do it, to walk it, and it turned out to be one of the most transformational parts of my life, and um, got into this major just like bliss space
Mm.
for months after. I mean, during and then after, and it was this gift, this intense gift of what it can feel like when you are just directly connected to spirit. And um, I think the combination of the solitude, I'd never been on my own for that long doing something like that. The movement, the continual, like, being in new places and meeting people, and my element, which is travel. And then I also read The Power of Now at the same time. Have you read that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it just the perfect storm that came together and just set me into this space where I really recognized how connected everything is. For the first time, I felt it. For the first time, like I could understand what it meant to see the blades of grass and the sunset and the person next to me and the water and the birds flying over, and it was all the same thing. And yeah, so um, definitely a really powerful experience um, that informed the next chapter of my life. And I do think that it was connected to the illness because, I mean, in a few ways, but because when it started to wear off, this euphoria or bliss connection, when it started to become less intense, I got very scared and was afraid of losing it. And
Mm.
I didn't have the tools yet in my life to know how to recreate it at all. it felt like this enigma that I had somehow come into, and I was so scared of losing it. And I think this resistance to the now and like a lack of trust in the fact that this is a gift and it's showing me like what is possible, but it's not necessarily, what I am going to be living in for the rest of my life. Yeah, I think that kind of dissonance definitely uh, contributed, as well as just being shot out, my mind and my psyche and everything being shot out into a different point than my body could hold. And so things kind of just like broke down so they could be rebuilt.
Mm. And during that process, is that when you were writing, or were you inspired afterwards to write, or was there a combination of that from the book?
So the book is mostly around the post period. Like the poems themselves, a lot of them are about that period, but they're not, it's kind of me looking back and me
Mm.
being in the aftermath and being in the the portions that are like kind of catapulting me forward into the next chapter. I definitely was writing throughout all of that, but it was more journaling and that kind of thing, not necessarily like poems for a book. Yeah.
What's one of your favorite poems from Golden Threads?
Ooh. Um,
If you want to
all
share,
of
if you have
them.
access to it, share a
I
little bit
do.
of your book.
Sure. All right. Let me pull it up and I will
Hmm.
pick one for you. So there's one called Sweet Creature that I read or I wrote, I think probably in 2018, maybe 19. Um, Hang on, let me just find it.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay. Um, yeah, this one I wrote from the land where I'm from my mom's house where I was staying, and after I got back from Spain, and just kind of frolicking around in the nature in the backyard. Uh, and it's very it's a powerful one to me because it signifies kind of this recognition of who I am and the our connection to nature and how integral that is for us as humans to understand and respect nature itself, but respect the nature in ourselves and how we are a part of it. And anyway, yeah, I will read you this one. Okay. It's called Sweet Creature, which is it's funny that oh, I disappeared. It's funny that this is one I chose, and I told you about the Harry Potter, Harry Styles um connection because he has a song that's called this it's called Sweet Creature. Um okay. Sweet creature, you belong here. Naked in nature, flesh soles in the grass, bare hands open to the bark of the great poplars as you dance through their forest to melodies in your head. Bring yourself home, my dear. Your place is here, with the earth between your toes, golden locks spinning wet in the gentle rain. This is you, unbridled, untamed, unnamed. A life behind closed doors, beneath fluorescent lights, was never meant for your spirit, for she is a wild one, and she knows the depth from whence you came. Imitations are not in her color palette as she sees straight through the false and will only chart your course true north. If you stray, she will block your way. Together you must heed the call. Return to your rightful throne of living wood and dancing leaves, where ancient magic whispers your name. A haven for your kind, waiting patiently for you to remember who you are and come running. Here, under the canopies of trees, birds perch on your crown, their song in your ears, a tiara of vines and flowers tangled and braided, become one with your hair. They descend together into the earth, rooting you, recharging you, avatar of the divine. You belong here alongside the streams, clear veins of the forest carrying life to every limb and corner and to the wind which speaks a subtle language you taste on your breath. You belong here among the fairies and animals and priestess wisdom, where magic is revered and freedom is queen. Sweet creature, you belong to no one, but your home is here. You are a wanderer, and distant lands will always call your name, but you will never cease to find a home in the forest of your skin, beside the rivers raging red within.
Woo!
I don't know. Yeah,
Beautiful. Yeah,
thanks.
I could be there. I was like in that poem. Um, yeah, so hmm.
That it's a lot of I don't know if said this about the book yet, but a lot of reflections around unpatterning the perfectionism, but also just people pleasing. And so I can hear that in that poem from that time, I guess was at least 5 years ago, where I was just very much reminding myself that I I don't exist to please others. No one does. And yeah, that's a major thread through it all too.
Hmm. Yeah, so many poignant themes, and one of my favorite lines was Avatar the Divine. I love that.
Hmm.
It's like recreating who we are. And I feel like nature tends to help us do that, right? Nature is unapologetic. She is cyclical. She is wild and never the same,
Hmm.
right? But then there is that rhythm within nature as well. So, yeah, it's that beautiful dance between consistency and, like you said, unbridled energy. It's like all of it and nothing at once.
Yeah, I like that. And nature just it's anything in nature doesn't apologize for being what it is. I don't know, there's probably several quotes that talk about that, but I've seen the one about the river or a river doesn't apologize for carving its way through the mountain or for being wet or for being too loud. It's just what it is. There's no shame in nature.
Mm,
And yeah, that's a huge thing or lesson for me just to remember that and and know that we're perfect as we are, and we get to play with life in all the ways and learn, and crazy ride, huh?
Yeah. And I love how you broke up the book. I'm assuming it's all the elements. Some of them are in different languages. So can you talk
Yeah.
more about that?
Sure, yeah. The first one's water in English. Second is tierra, which is earth in Spanish, and then aire, which is air in Spanish, and then agni, which is Sanskrit for fire.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think it's I wanted to I wanted to pay homage to how important yoga has been in my life, and learning from those ancient traditions and texts, and people from India and all across the world. But yeah, and through Agni, and that connection to fire and connection to our spirit, and kind of feels like a rebirthing portal back out into the world, and I end the book with it. Um, and then yeah, I chose Spanish just because of how uh, powerful Spain was on my journey, and speaking Spanish is I love speaking Spanish, and just yeah, the words have a different ring and or connection, I feel, in all the languages, in the different languages. But yeah, for me, that order is kind of the feeling of the entire process for me internally, and how it started, those elements in that sequence
Hmm.
leading leading me through. And initially the book was very separated. Like, I tried to put all the poems that felt like this kind of rebirth energy into the Agni, and then, all the watery woe is me poems in the first section. And there is there is still that um trajectory, but it's not as cut and dry now. They are all mixed in, and I think I changed that when I read books that did that, and I just wasn't as enthralled with that kind of thing, because you're here for the book for the entire process, and
Hmm.
if one portion is too similar, I don't know, I just found myself kind of losing interest when it wasn't as mixed. So I wanted to do that, but also to just kind of share in a way, like present the book and the work and the poems in a way that makes sense in reality, because you're not always in that deep space even within a week or a month, like it fluctuates day to day, hour to hour, and um yeah, we are multifaceted whole living beings. So I guess, yeah, like, it's nature, there's a rhythm, but but she's being what
Chaos.
she wants to be. Yeah, exactly.
The chaotic rhythm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and holding both, right? Like sometimes, a lot of the time, we're holding multiple emotions in
Exactly,
a
right.
moment, a day. So sharing that process, and yeah, I noticed I was like, oh, I love that, and like the different languages, bringing that element to it. Which which element was Sweet Creature from? Do you remember where you put that one? If you don't, that's okay.
I think I put it in Earth. I think she's in Tierra, the second section. Um, yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
Yeah,
What do you
she's in that
want?
one.
What do you desire for people to receive from Golden Threads?
My deepest wish for anyone who reads this book is that they feel less alone, that they feel empowered and inspired to keep moving, whether something is whether they're in the depths of emotion, depths of hard, challenging emotion, or the depths of ecstatic emotion. I think it's about recognizing that everything is fluid, and we are, yeah, just this ability to learn from it all and to understand who we are a little bit better, in this process of life. um, I want people to feel inspired to create and to document their own lives in whatever medium that looks like for them. Uh, yeah, so much of this book is about me finding my voice and coming behind it and recognizing that I can stand up for who I am, and there's no shame or guilt in that, and the medicine I have is so needed, and the medicine that everyone has is so needed. We all have this unique brand, this unique tincture of art, of life to offer people, and by learning who we are and then standing up for who we are, and putting ourselves in the places that are going to fuel that, it's all we can really do to really support each other and connect with each other in this life. And yeah, so I guess that's the bottom line is, if people would get to know themselves just a little deeper from reading the words, and choose to create in whatever way it looks for them, I'm happy. That's my hope for it.
Amazing. Well, Sydney, thank you for following yourself and following your voice and putting yourself out there, right? Anytime we create art and we expose it to the world, things come up and our inner gremlin comes up, and it's an act of bravery and courage to say fuck it and do it anyway. So I'm really excited to see how your book impacts and inspires those who read it. I have loved reading these poems, and just from meeting you, yeah, at a music festival in 2022 and seeing that journey that you've been on as well. It's really amazing.
Likewise. We've both lived a couple lifetimes since then, I think.
Just a couple. No big deal, right? The solo female traveler journey. We'll have to have a round table of all the female solo travelers I've come across, because you're one of them, and it's just always amazing to connect back because there is that golden thread like you talked about, like these golden threads on your journeys, on your travels, and it connects you to the past, and then it also connects you to the present. So thank you for being a golden thread in my journey.
Oh, likewise. Thank you for having me. This has been amazing and healing, even to just speak it directly with someone, that I respect and trust and am grateful to. Um,
Mm.
yeah, thank you for how you show up in the world and everything that you're bringing, and you've inspired me more than you know, I'm sure, in all the ways. And um, yeah, it's a really beautiful thing to get to witness each other in our own journeys and support each other. And I'm grateful. Thank you.
Mm. Thank you for that. I fully receive it. Yeah. The rawness, right? And the ebbs and the flows and yeah, just being creators, humans in this time. It's so potent to share our messy journeys and perfectionisms and beauty, right? It's all here. And I'm, yeah, I'm grateful as well. Where can people find you? Where can people purchase the book? When's the book officially coming out? Share all the goods.
So, my website is sydneycrutch.art, www.sydneycrutch.art. Um, my Instagram is at Sydney Crutch, and I'll be updating the website soon. As the book is going to be available for uh, purchase for order probably in about a week, maybe a little bit sooner. I'm doing this. I'm launching it with a Kickstarter, in order to support. We didn't even talk about this. In order to support the printing costs, because I'm choosing to self-publish outside of Amazon, which with an amazing company called Greener Printer, that all the paper is recycled, it's post-consumer waste 100%. The ink is not petroleum, it's all vegetable, soy, or algae based. And their production is solar powered. Like it's the real deal. Like everything, the printing industry can be very toxic to the environment, and it was really important to me to not go through someone that stands for exactly what I'm not advocating for in the book. So the way that I've come up with to do this is to launch pre-orders through the Kickstarter. So when you back the Kickstarter, there's the first tier is you get the book and shipping's included, and then you can go higher, with different tiers with various offerings. I'm gonna be offering my own typewriter bookmarks, my own cards that came to life last year when I was in Taos with my photography and poetry on them. I have two friends that are donating their books to be in one of the tiers, their own debut poetry books, and a couple other people that are donating cards. So it's a lot of beautiful options, as you go up in the tiers. But the first one is you can just order the book, and that's how I'm gonna pay for the printing. So once the Kickstarter ends, I will I will order, as the book is all ready, and get the books and then start shipping them out. So it's going to be a limited run because of the way that we're doing this. So if you do want to order it, it's going to be doing it within this time frame, at least for the first run, and then I hope to do more in the future. So yeah, I'll post that link, through my Instagram, through my website. You can sign up for my email list on either of those, which the notifications will be going out. So yeah, well, I don't know when this is going to come out, but we're recording on the 23rd. So hope to have it out by March 1st, we'll say.
Amazing.
And yeah, excited for anyone to read it and reach out, connect with me.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here. Thank
Yeah,
you for sharing your art with the world. It's a pleasure to know you in this lifetime.
likewise. Thank you, Michelle.